Okay, questions about this? Do you know the difference? Be able to see, identify difference between true, quasi, free. What is randomization? Don't forget internal validity, external validity.
I have a question, actually.
Yes.
It's from this quiz on all of this, and I got one wrong, and I think I know why I got it wrong, but I just want to double check why. So it said a researcher examines the relapse rate for recovering alcohol-dependent clients who suffered severe personal loss in the first year of recovery and compares this to the relapse rate for people who did not suffer such a loss. Is it a pre, quasi, or a true? I said pre because to me they were only measuring, but it was quasi. Is that because even though they didn't manipulate the fact that somebody had died, and that was
there was a difference.
There was a manipulation of some kind?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a difference. That's exactly correct.
That's what I needed to know.
Any other question? Good question.
Will we be getting these quizzes back?
Yes.
Okay.
Wednesday, those are coming back.
Okay.
Well, you got your first one back,
Sure.
but then the other one, yes, those are coming back. All right, any other operational definition? The kinds of control: independent, dependent, extraneous variable, subject variable. All that kind of stuff. Everybody cool?
Mm-hmm.
All right, then the next area we went to. Somebody tell me, what's the most important word in the definition of learning?
Cognitive.
Pardon me?
Cognitive, maybe?
The most important definition, the most important word in our definition of learning is what? Learning is a relatively stable change in behavior as a function of
Experience.
say it.
Experience.
Experience.
Did you say that?
Remember, other things can cause changes in
Did
behavior.
you?
Maturation.
Oh, yep, I have it right here. Damn.
Maturation can change behavior. Injury, disease can change behavior. But learning is a function of experience. And then we talked about two major, actually we talked about three. We talked about classical, operant, and cognitive. Classical conditioning, somebody tell me, is about the relationship between what?
Stimuli.
Stimuli. Operant conditioning is the relationship between
Behavior and consequences.
behaviors and consequences. Cognitive is what? Cognitive is what? Thinking. Remember we had SRC, and that's radical behavior right there. Stimulus, response, consequence. A radical behaviorist would say, that's all you need to know. You got the game. What's going on in the environment? What's the behavior? What's the consequence? You got the game. However, do you remember that day when I complained about my cold coffee?
Mm-hmm.
And so I brought in a hot plate?
Mm-hmm.
And then I burnt my hand on the hot plate?
Mm-hmm.
And you guys learned something that day. What did you learn? Don't do what the idiot just did and touch the hot plate. SRC could not explain that. SRC, if you yourself don't touch and burn your hand on the hot plate, you're not going to know, don't touch the hot plate. And so cognitive said what?
ORC.
Brain.
Organism. And what is that? The brain. That we do see. We learn from observational learning, vicarious learning, that kind of stuff like that. I went as far, well, I'm going to piss off Skinner and Pavlov and people like that right now. I went as far as to suggest what? That how we learn in terms of thoughts, memories, feelings can be as liable to classical and operant conditioning as any overt behavior. Because I'm not a behaviorist. I'm a cognitive behaviorist. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cognition, thinking, all that kind of stuff. And then we went into Pavlov's the whole basic thing with Pavlov. What was that? Hey, unconditioned means what? Unconditioned.
No learning necessary.
No learning necessary. Unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned response. Conditioned means what?
Learned.
Conditioned stimulus. Conditioned stimulus. Conditioned response. We also had that neutral stimulus. And then, don't forget, with learning theory, there's always the target. What is it we're interested in? With Pavlov's dogs, we were interested in what? Salivate. But all kinds of things can be targets, can't they? And we jumped out of the pages of the book, out of Pavlov's lab, into real life, into addiction, into counseling. Every time we talked about this stuff, we're jumping into real life using this stuff. It's not just a bunch of fancy shit to remember to make everybody think you know lots of stuff. No, this is so important. Gang, what was the unconditioned stimulus?
The food.
No, what is unconditioned stimulus?
Oh, what is the definition of it?
Yeah. Anything out there?
No, anything in nature that produces a specific thing.
Or the target.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait. What?
Anything out there. Now remember, with Pavlov, the target was slobbering dog.
Right.
Unconditioned stimulus. Anything out there that will result in that target without the necessity of learning. Food would be an unconditioned stimulus for the target of salivate.
Okay.
What is the unconditioned response? The target. The target. Salivating dogs. Salivate to the food. What's the neutral stimulus?
Bell.
Anything out there that will not, by nature, result in the unconditioned response. Bells are not going to make dogs salivate. They may make the dog, hey, look around, where's that coming from? What's that noise? As a matter of fact, the sound of a bell may be an unconditioned stimulus for, hey, what's going on? Where is that coming from? But it's not an unconditioned stimulus if the target is salivate. However, if we match them, bell food, bell food, bell food, bell food, next thing you know, we ring the bell and the dog is salivating. Now, the bell has become the conditioned stimulus. Salivate to the bell. Always got to be clear about that. Salivate to the food. Salivate to the bell. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
For example, with my car accident, now I got the little car phobia. Remember that story? What was the unconditioned stimulus?
Accident.
The accident, the dangerous situation. What was the unconditioned response?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. What was the neutral stimulus?
Car.
Car. And then what? Car, accident. What becomes the conditioned stimulus?
Car.
What becomes the conditioned response?
Anxiety to the car.
Anxiety to the car.
To any red car. Small
To
red
the car,
car.
yeah.
Okay.
And that had to do with what? Generalization and discrimination.
Yeah.
Remember out there that day when I was looking for my nuts and berries and I got bit by the tiger. Got lucky, got away from it that day, but from that day on, anytime I smelled that smell, heard that sound, what's going on?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Kind of thing like that. Not all tigers smell exactly the same or make the exact same noise. I'd better. But then at the same time, well, I'd better generalize so that I don't get snuck on by the next tiger. Also, discrimination. Don't forget that. What was that? I don't want that every damn smell and every damn sound out there I'm freezing up. If that's the case, what am I not doing?
Living your life.
Finding my food. You see what I'm saying with that? You see guys with all that stuff? Is everybody cool with these five, this basic paradigm here? Any questions about that? Now, gang, remember, take this from, don't just memorize Pavlov's dogs, become proficient with the concept so that you can make this work for, again, I mean, look at, how about, what did we talk about? How about this one? Once again, think about this for a minute. Let's go to the grocery store and buy the Hot Rod magazine. Let's open up the big old 2-page color ad in the middle, see and buy the new 2020 Camaro. And what's the most predominant feature in that ad?
Naked lady.
The bikini-clad woman on the hood of the car. What the hell's that got to do with buying a car? What was the unconditioned stimulus? Sex. What's the unconditioned arousal?
Arousal?
What was the unconditioned response?
Arousal.
What was the unconditioned arousal? What was the unconditioned response? Arousal. What was the neutral stimulus?
The car.
The car.
Car. What's the conditioned stimulus?
The car.
The car.
What's the conditioned response?
Arousal.
Arousal to the
Arousal
car.
to the car. Hey, gang. If only one person one day would have... Think about that for a minute. What's the unconditioned stimulus? Alcohol.
Oh, okay.
What's the unconditioned response? Our physical response to that alcohol, resulting in craving. What was the neutral stimulus? However, beer, pretty soon becomes the conditioned stimulus.
Yeah.
And what's the conditioned response?
Craving for beer.
Craving the beer. That guy had no intention, no thought about beer that day. He's finally clean and sober for his son's finally 10th birthday. Pepsi, 7-Up, Mountain Dew, off to the races he goes. If only one person, one day, would have told him. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Guess what? This is going to happen. It's called classical conditioning. Do you see that? Do you see that, you guys? And we step one after another with that. Do you see how that works like that? That woman, hey, what did we say? She's just helping grandma out. Here's the milk. Here's the butter. Here's the Brillo pads. She doesn't get back to grandma's that day. Why?
Does the Brillo pad set her off?
Were a conditioned stimulus, right? You see what I'm saying with that? You see how this stuff works? It can be insidious, you guys. And by the time we get where we're 15, 16, let alone our 20s, 30s, 40s, we are a walking encyclopedia of one classical conditioning kind of after another. You're never going to get them all. But one of the tasks early on, counseling, what did we say? We just went over that list of risks to high to early recovery. What was high on that list? Classical conditioning. Those, what do they call them around the tables? The triggers. This is how this works. This is how this stuff works with this. Hey, gang, I come to you with my little car phobia because they've outlawed pickup trucks, and I got to figure out how I'm going to ride around with those little cars now. And you use classical conditioning to help people with their phobias. What are you going to do?
Put you in that red car.
You know, put me in that little car, drive me around, and hope the hell you don't have an accident.
Yes.
And what did we say with that? Hey, what if Skinner? Hey, how does it go? Bell, salivate. Bell, salivate. Bell, salivate. Bell, salivate. Bell, salivate. Bell. If Pavlov, once conditioning has occurred, if Pavlov just keeps ringing that bell and does it once in a while, be associated with that food, pretty soon the dog stops responding to the bell. And what did we call that?
Extinction.
Extinction.
So you can be extinct. Your
Well-
car phobia can be extinct.
Well, if I cared enough about that to want to, yeah, that's how that would work with that. We would do extinction with that.
But extinction doesn't mean forget.
Extinction doesn't mean forget. That's right. What was that other word?
Spontaneous recovery.
And gang, this is a big one. You got to remember this. Once again, extinction is not delete. It's not gone. It's just put someplace else. And after a period of time, if you reintroduce that conditioned stimulus, there's a good chance that conditioned response is going to come back. And that was what? That was all about, hey, what is it around the tables? What do they say about old playgrounds and playmates? Hey, I'm not here to drink. I'm here to play that game of pool with Bill and Bob. And the next thing you know, drunker in hell by the end of the night. What was that? Spontaneous recovery. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Spontaneous recovery. That's what that's all about. AA probably didn't know about spontaneous recovery when they said that, but that was pretty damn good wisdom. Old playgrounds and playmates. Does that make sense with that stuff? And then we talked about, as we went through all this stuff, there are rules here. Pavlov's not going to bell food one time and that dog's slobbering, and then the next time it hears the bell, it's going to bell food, bell food. You're going to have to do a number of associations. And another thing is, Pavlov's not going to ring that bell and then go over to the other side of the lab and take care of a couple of things and then come back 5 minutes later and give the dog the food. Not going to be an association there. Some of those kinds of things like that. Extinction does happen. Pretty quick. Bell, 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 bell. Pretty soon the dog forget this. But then, the very first example I gave you about this was my car accident. And I broke all the rules. Number one, it did only take one time. Hell, I didn't wake up for over a month. I wasn't confronted with a little car for a year. Over a year. And to this day, I still got it. Never had another accident, but I still got it. And I have ridden around in little cars. Don't like them, but I've... What was that? One trial learning. And what was that? Biological preparedness. We are biologically prepared. We humans, the way the brain works. Hey, classical conditioning is one of the reasons why we're here today. Our capacity for classical conditioning. One of the reasons why we're here today in the first place. Survival. And we are biologically prepared to learn certain associations very hard, fast, and strong. Remember all this stuff, you guys? I'm just reminding right now. What were the kinds of things that we learned real hard, fast, and strong?
Things that involve fear, right?
The things related to anxiety, fear, danger. And sometimes we can, by the way we think about things, turn something that really isn't all that dangerous into a big danger by the way we think about it. You see what I'm saying with that?
Number 2?
2 and 4, I believe.
2 or 4?
2 and 4.
2 and 4. Yeah, you're right.
The 2s and the 4s. Nice work. Good. Good. Good work. Now, you guys. We talked about learned taste aversion. One trial learning. We talked about this whole idea. That person, they go out that night. And the next thing you know, they're dancing naked on the bar with that Rudy Tooty Snooty Schnapps they never had before. Next morning, their car is parked in the neighbor's doghouse. And they're laying there. And that phone call, the hey dude, do you remember what you did last night phone call? And they're swearing never, 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 never again. And you're thinking, God, I hope it finally learns a damn lesson. Problem is, by noon, it's not for a long time. By 3 o'clock, it's not tonight. By 6, it's where's the party? And you're sitting there thinking, what the hell? What's wrong with you? You were so sick. And all that other stuff. If I'm so afraid of cars, little cars, what the hell am I doing on a motorcycle? Same thing. Remember, that person may go back out that next night. They may start drinking alcohol again that next night. But I'll bet you my Harley they're not drinking Rudy Tooty Snooty Schnapps that next night. Why? One trial learning is very specific. Unfortunately, that brain. It's kind of like, remember that day? And I was out looking for my nuts and berries? And who was it that stole all the purple berries? And so I had to go find other berries, and I found some nice, shiny, red, brown berries. My brain doesn't know. There's no sign there. I gobbled it down, those shiny, red, brown berries. My brain at first said, nice work, you ate something good for you. About an hour and a half, 2 hours later, sicker than hell. And my brain, from that day on, learned never eat those little red, brown berries again. What if my brain would have said that day, you ate something and got sick, never eat again?
You die.
That wouldn't have worked out, would it? I'd have been dead. Might as well have died from the berries. It's the same thing. Very specific. The little shiny red berries. Very specific. I was killed on 4 wheels, not 2 wheels. Very specific. The brain's not saying don't ever drink alcohol again. It's saying don't ever drink Rudy Tooty Schnooty Schnapps again.
But what if that person does go back and drink Rudy Tooty Schnooty Schnapps? Are they just stupid or?
No. Remember, what did we say? This damn thing ruins everything.
Okay.
And then the cognitive stuff. What if somehow or another I got sicker than hell on that Rudy Schnapps?
Mm-hmm.
And then next morning I'm sitting there sicker than hell, but my brain thinking about, you know what? I'll tell you what the real problem was. It was those fucking tacos I ate before.
Yes. Okay.
You see, that's
Yes.
always gonna.
Yes.
That part of that.
Just came full circle there, Celts.
And is there a term for like that? Because that's not cognitive resolution. Is
That's
it?
kind of
That's cognitive dissonance, isn't it?
Yeah, that is too.
Okay, that's what I was trying
It's
to
going to be
figure out.
okay for me to drink again tonight because the alcohol did make me sick. It was eating. It was whatever it was. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
That kind of a thing like that. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yes.
Does everybody see this? Look at how we're looking at some pretty damn complex human behavior here. Generalization, discrimination, all that stuff. And then we threw in a whole other thing called the two-factor theory. Up to this point, we've been talking about classical conditioning. Now we're going to throw in operant conditioning, and that was the consequences. Does everybody know? Remember, the difference between reinforcement and punishment. Positive and negative. Everybody cool with that? Hey, gang, quick quiz. Positive, negative, reinforcement, punishment. What's the most powerful one of those four combinations?
Variable ratio.
No, not that yet. That's the schedule. Of those four combinations, what's the most powerful? Negative reinforcement. Don't forget, gang, we went on and on. Think about this at hedonic calculus once again. Hey, yeah, let's give drugs a great big fat plus, positive reinforcer. Drugs are drugs because they work. The only problem is that the punishers start to come along real fast. And at some point you would think the punishers are outweighing the fun of it. But this person keeps doing it, and pretty soon it gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and you begin to, you're nuts, you're crazy, you're out of control, you're insane, what's wrong with you?
But
People do not ruin their lives for the fun of it. That's where we have to look at this third component. What was that? We're not ruining our lives for the fun of it, but we will pay a very, very, very high price for negative reinforcement.
But at some point, everything at the bottom doesn't matter anymore because you're not using for fun. You're using because you have to survive.
Negative reinforcement. That's exactly. You just said exactly what the point we're making here.
Okay.
You're exactly right. You know, the funny thing is, what we're going to see in February also is that the fun of it's even diminishing as tolerance kicks in. Pretty soon, it's not even all that damn much fun. You're right.
Right.
What are you using for?
To avoid getting
Negative
sick.
reinforcement. I mean, the number one, first negative reinforcement is what? Right now, people
Yeah.
are waking up sicker than hell. What are they
Okay.
going to do? They're going to use so they don't have withdrawal.
I was gonna say like
Negative
you don't-
reinforcement.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
This individual. And this is what you got to find with this. The
Right.
most powerful of them all. We will do things for. We will take risk for. We will pay a price for negative reinforcement we would never consider for positive. I'm not going to jump out of that airplane for the fun of it, but will I jump out of that airplane to avoid the airplane crash? You had a shitting, get out of the way.
Have you ever
No. All right, next question.
Have you ever worked with somebody that like okay, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, abuse, emotional abuse, whatever as a child? That's why I'm using. Those are like pretty. You know, have you ever worked with somebody that they're like, oh no, I don't really have.
Yeah.
And did you ever figure out what
And what
the
did I-
1s, 2s, 3s, and
what did I
4s
say?
were?
Number one, never give somebody a problem, a disease.
Right.
Number two, because they say they got nothing, does that mean they got nothing?
No.
Not yet.
Right, but can you give me an example of something that you found that they didn't consider a 1s, 2s, 3, or 4, but it ended up being that?
Can I say that, yes, we're going to do that.
Okay.
But that
Yeah.
is time spent, and we should. That
Okay.
I want to
Yep.
use this time to get you guys ready for that.
Gotcha.
Right now, what I want you to know are the basic concepts of this stuff. I promise you, we're going to do that. It's called our counseling stuff and cognitive therapy counseling
Okay.
stuff. I promise you, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
But I don't want to spend that time now. I want to spend this
Fair
time
enough.
now getting you ready for this test.
Fair enough.
Cool?
Yep.
Is everybody cool with this stuff then? And again, positive, negative, reinforcement, punishment. The most powerful of all, negative reinforcement.